There are some names out there that they instantly grab you, don't they? Names that feel loaded with mystery, maybe a little bit of unease.
Definitely a sense of something hidden.
Exactly. And Skull and Bones well, it's absolutely one of those.
It really is.
So today we're taking a deep dive into this centuries-old secret society at Yale University. I mean, for decades, it's been the subject of whispers, rumors.
And some pretty loud theories, too, actually.
Yeah, about its real connections to power in America. It's fascinating stuff.
It is. That's precisely the enigma of Skull and Bones, isn't it? You've got this blend of, intense exclusivity, the sheer history of it.
Right.
And then the really notable achievements of so many of its members. It creates a natural curiosity.
So for our listeners, we want to try and cut through some of that noise today.
Exactly. Our goal here isn't really to confirm or, debunk any grand conspiracies. It's more about exploring what the available information tells us about Skull and Bones. Looking at its official beginnings, how it describes itself.
Okay.
And then diving into the, let's say, more imaginative interpretations that have sprung up around it. We'll be looking at descriptions, the sort of factual accounts, and that whole range of theories.
Got it. So where does the story officially kick off? What's the baseline?
Okay, so the founding year we know is 1832.
1832, okay, quite a while back.
Right, and it's established as a senior secret society, specifically operating within Yale University.
A senior society, so just for people in their final year.
That's the tradition, yes. And from the get-go, the core values seem to revolve around, tradition itself, obviously.
Makes sense for an old institution.
A strong sense of brotherhood among the members is emphasized, and also this cultivation of leadership qualities.
Leadership.
Yeah.
Okay, so grooming future leaders, essentially.
That seems to be the implication, yes.
Yeah.
Tradition provides that continuity, that shared identity, right?
Yeah.
Brotherhood fosters those deep, lifelong connections. And the focus on leadership, well, it suggests a purpose beyond just the college years, like a preparation for future influence.
Okay.
These three things, tradition, brotherhood, leadership, they consistently pop up in how the society presents itself or how it's described.
And you mentioned that select group that's crucial too, isn't it? The exclusivity.
Absolutely key. Every year, they choose about 15 seniors. Just 15 from the Yale College class.
15? Wow. That's tiny. How do they even pick them?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The criteria aren't exactly public knowledge.
The secrecy starts early.
It does. Now, the rumor mill, often points to things you might expect. Academic success, sure. Demonstrated leadership on campus.
Like club presidents, team captains, that sort of thing.
Probably, yeah. People making things happen. And let's be honest, at a place like Yale, family connections, legacies, they likely play a role too.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's not transparent, that's interesting in itself, right?
It really is. That opacity, that lack of clear, stated criteria, it fuels so much of the speculation.
Because people fill in the blanks.
Exactly. When an organization with this kind of history, these kinds of alumni, doesn't openly say, here's how we choose, it just invites questions. So while the factors we mentioned are probably involved, the absence of an official statement allows for endless guesswork about, hidden agendas or biases and who gets tapped.
And then you get to the initiation rituals. Oh boy, this is where it gets really mysterious.
Right. The stuff of legend, as you said.
Elaborate, super secretive. People talk about lifelong oaths of loyalty being sworn. Of course, the actual specifics are, well, they're mostly guesswork, aren't they? Which just makes it more intriguing.
It does. You can just imagine. But, rituals in general, they're powerful tools, right, for creating strong group bonds.
Yeah, that shared experience.
And the intense secrecy around the Skull and Bones initiation probably amplifies that effect massively. It forges this unique, intense bond for the members. It marks a real transition into this exclusive, lifelong fellowship.
And you mentioned lifelong there. That's another key piece. Membership doesn't just end when you graduate Yale.
Not at all. It creates this powerful, enduring network. These individuals stay connected, often for decades.
And when you look at the alumni list, I mean, it's genuinely remarkable, isn't it?
It's quite something.
You've got former U.S. presidents.
Multiple presidents, yeah.
Supreme Court justices, cabinet secretaries, huge names in business and finance.
Leaders across various sectors.
The sheer influence wielded by people who share this common secret background. It's hard to just dismiss that,
You really can't. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, right? That enduring network, that concentration of members in really high positions of power, That's precisely what captures so much public attention and, frankly, suspicion. It raises legitimate questions about the nature of influence, how these connections might operate, even if it's all perfectly legal and ethical.
It suggests the potential for a kind of self-reinforcing cycle of elite power.
That becomes the point of discussion, absolutely.
Okay. Which leads us neatly into the more speculative side of things, the conspiracy theories.
Indeed, where the lines get blurrier.
Because that secrecy, combined with the undeniable success of so many members, it's like the perfect breeding ground for these theories, isn't it?
It's a perfect storm, really, for these ideas to emerge and gain traction.
And we're talking quite a range here. Everything from like a hidden power elite pulling the strings behind the scenes
The classic one.
to alleged links with like the old Illuminati.
That one keeps coming back.
Whispers of actual occult practices, and then the really grand stuff, like a global domination plot. It's a whole spectrum.
It is a very wide range.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how a lack of, easily available, verifiable information can just lead to this explosion of interpretations, some maybe more grounded than others.
Right.
The very characteristics that define Skull and Bones, the secrecy, the elite membership, the rituals they take, they can be easily reinterpreted through a lens of suspicion.
And used to support these more elaborate narratives.
Exactly. So maybe we should delve into some of the main categories of these theories, break them down a bit.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with the power elite theory. This feels like the most common one, maybe?
It's probably the one that gets the most airtime, yes. The core idea here is that Skull and Bones isn't just some college club that happens to have successful alumni.
Right, it's something more.
It's seen as an integral part of a larger, unelected group of elites who are secretly, controlling American society. And some theories extend that globally.
Pulling the strings from behind the curtain.
That's the image. The theory suggests that members are specifically chosen for this purpose, groomed for power, and then actively helped by this network to reach influential positions.
So it's not just networking, it's coordination.
That's the allegation. This theory really resonates with a broader kind of societal concern, doesn't it? About hidden power structures, the potential for a gap between formal democracy and where real influence lies.
Yeah, you hear that anxiety a lot.
And the fact that numerous bonesmen have indeed held top jobs in government, finance, intelligence. Well, proponents see that not as individual achievement or just good networking.
But as proof.
As evidence of a coordinated system at work, yes.
Okay, then there's the Illuminati connection. This one always sounds a bit more out there.
It adds a historical, almost mystical layer. It links Skull and Bones back to the Bavarian Illuminati.
Right, the 18th century group. Secret society, radical idea.
Exactly. Known for its secrecy, its Enlightenment ideals, and its supposed aim to, reshape society. The theory basically posits that Skull and Bones is a modern continuation.
Like an American chapter carrying the torch.
Perhaps an offshoot, yeah. Carrying on this centuries-old agenda of ultimately global control, it's a theory with surprising staying power.
Why do you think it lasts?
Well, the historical mystique around the original Illuminati is pretty compelling,
It's true.
So by linking Skull and Bones to that group, with its own history of secrecy and rumored influence, it creates this narrative of a continuous hidden hand shaping world events across centuries. It's a powerful story.
Okay, moving into even maybe darker territory.
Yeah.
The occult practices theory.
This one leans heavily on the symbolism and the secrecy of the rituals.
The name itself, Skull and Bones, is pretty evocative.
Extremely. So given that imagery and the intense secrecy around initiations, some theories propose that the society actually engages in, occult practices.
Like what? Magic? Rituals?
Speculation ranges from esoteric rituals to, in some versions, the actual worship of dark or unconventional forces. It definitely plays on the dramatic imagery associated with Skulls and Bones.
Yeah, that symbolism is potent.
Absolutely. And symbols are inherently powerful, right? They evoke strong emotions, associations. In the absence of concrete details about what actually happens to those rituals.
The imagination runs wild.
Precisely. The imagination fills in the blanks. And that Skull and Bones imagery, which is traditionally linked to mortality, secrets, the unknown, becomes a focal point for these more mystical, sometimes sinister interpretations.
Okay. And then the biggest one of all, the grand finale of conspiracy theories.
That would be the global domination theory, sometimes called the New World Order theory.
Right, NWO.
This takes the power elite idea and basically cranks it up to 11. It's just Skull and Bones isn't just influencing things, it's actively working to establish a single totalitarian global government.
Wow. Controlled by whom?
Controlled by a select few, presumably including the most influential bonesmen and their allies.
It's the ultimate power fantasy. Or nightmare, I guess.
Depending on your perspective,
Okay.
yeah. It represents the most extreme interpretation, really drawing elements from the other theories but scaling them up to a global level.
What anxieties does that tap into?
Often it taps into anxieties about globalization, about centralized power, maybe the erosion of national sovereignty, things like that.
Okay. But it's important to stress this one. Less evidence, right?
It's crucial to note that this theory, while definitely widespread in certain circles, generally has the least amount of direct, concrete evidence supporting it compared to, say, just observing the network's influence.
Right. So when people do argue for these theories, what kind of evidence do they usually point to? What are the building blocks?
There are a few recurring themes, definitely. First and foremost, as we've touched on, the secrecy itself.
Just the fact that it is secret is seen as suspicious.
Exactly. The
Okay.
intense secrecy, the exclusivity, they're often presented as inherently suspect. The argument basically goes, if there's nothing shady happening, why hide everything? Why be so exclusive?
It's a kind of where there's smoke, there's fire logic.
That's a central idea in many conspiracy theories, yes. That lack of transparency isn't seen as a desire for privacy or just maintaining tradition.
No, it's interpreted as concealment.
As an attempt to conceal something potentially harmful, manipulative, or just contrary to public interest, it immediately raises a red flag for those inclined to be suspicious of power.
Okay. What else? The alumni connections must be huge.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer number of Skull and Bones members who reach the absolute pinnacles of various fields: government, business, intelligence, media.
It's not dismissed as just coincidence or good fortune.
Not by proponents of these theories, no. It's seen as direct evidence of a coordinated network actively promoting its own members, working towards shared, possibly hidden goals.
So the network itself is evidence.
The interconnectedness, yes. Theorists see it not just as, typical networking among successful Ivy Leaguers, but as a deliberate system. Mutual support, advancement, designed to consolidate power within their specific group.
And the symbolism, we talked about that imagery, that must get analyzed to death.
Oh, meticulously. That iconic skull and bones emblem itself, plus any other symbols that might be associated with the society's building, the tomb.
Right, the tomb.
They're all scrutinized for hidden meanings. Connections to ancient occult traditions, maybe subtle nods to conspiratorial aims. It becomes like trying to decode a secret language.
Symbol interpretation is tricky, though, isn't it? Very subjective.
Extremely subjective. Symbols are inherently ambiguous. Theorists often find patterns and connections that conveniently reinforce the beliefs they already hold.
Confirmation bias, maybe?
It can certainly play a role. What might just be symbolic tradition or even provocative imagery chosen long ago gets imbued with layers of hidden conspiratorial significance that might not have been intended.
Okay. What else? Any other kinds of evidence?
Well, there are often attempts to draw historical links,
So,
connecting Skull and Bones, or its members, to specific significant historical events or influential figures from the past. The idea is to suggest this isn't new. There's a long-standing pattern of influence, maybe manipulation, stretching back decades, even centuries.
trying to build a longer narrative arc of control.
Exactly. Suggesting continuity. Now, these historical connections are often based on, let's say, circumstantial evidence or interpretations of events that fit the narrative.
So, correlation, not necessarily causation.
Often, yes. It's crucial to really evaluate the strength of the direct evidence linking these historical dots to modern-day Skull and Bones rather than just seeing appealing patterns.
Right. And lastly,
Finally, there's the role of testimony from critics.
people who were there. Or new people.
Yeah, maybe former Yale students, perhaps faculty, or others who've spoken out against the society. They might cite concerns about elitism, undue influence on campus, or just a general feeling that something isn't quite right.
Personal accounts.
Personal accounts, yes. And these are often used to lend a kind of anecdotal credence, a human face, to the broader conspiracy theories.
How reliable is that, though?
Well, these personal accounts can offer valuable insights into the perceived culture and impact of the society, for sure. But it's also important to consider potential individual biases, maybe sour grapes, or interpretations that might not actually reflect a large-scale conspiracy. Eyewitness accounts are informative, but they're not always definitive proof of systemic issues.
Okay. So let's just entertain these theories for another minute. If they were true, why all this secrecy? What are the proposed motives behind concealing everything?
According to the theories you mean.
Yeah, what's the why?
Well, the primary suggestion usually lines up directly with the power elite idea. It's about maintaining and expanding the power and influence of the members themselves and the broader elite they supposedly represent.
So secrecy protects their power.
In this view, yes. Secrecy is a tool. It allows them to operate without public scrutiny, without accountability, preserving their privileged status.
Makes sense from that perspective. What else?
Another common motive cited is the need to protect hidden agendas.
Agendas, like what?
Secret goals, plans, things that are allegedly contrary to the best interests of the general public. The idea is, if their true intentions were actually known.
There'd be outrage, opposition.
Exactly. Widespread opposition. So the secrecy is necessary to keep the public in the dark while they pursue these goals.
Okay, that stems from a pretty deep suspicion of power.
It does. A belief that there are hidden forces manipulating events for their own benefit, often at everyone else's expense.
Then there's that more esoteric idea.
Yeah.
About knowledge.
Right, the idea of preserving some kind of special, maybe esoteric, or even forbidden knowledge.
Like Skull and Bones holds the key to ancient secrets.
That's the notion in some theories, that they possess some form of ancient wisdom or secret information, maybe scientific, maybe mystical, and they guard it jealously. They control who gets access.
That sounds like something out of a novel.
It taps into that age-old allure of secret knowledge, doesn't it? The belief in hidden truth that could change everything. And of course, if you control access to such knowledge, that inherently creates a huge power imbalance.
True. Any other proposed motives?
One more common one is the idea of advancing a specific political or economic ideology.
So using the network to push a particular worldview.
Precisely. Some theories posit that Skull and Bones acts as a vehicle for promoting a particular agenda. Maybe it's global capitalism, maybe a specific model of governance, maybe something else entirely.
And the members are the agents?
The members are seen as strategically positioned in key institutions, government, finance, media, specifically to further that ideological agenda. It suggests a very deliberate, coordinated effort to shape society according to their specific beliefs.
Okay. That covers the theories and their supposed motives pretty well, but we absolutely have to bring in the skeptical perspective now, right? The counter-argument.
Crucial. We need to look at the reasons for doubt regarding these grand conspiracy theories.
And the biggest one seems pretty straightforward. Where's the proof?
That is the fundamental challenge, yes.
Yeah.
The simple lack of concrete, direct, irrefutable proof. Despite decades, literally decades, of speculation, books, documentaries, investigations.
No smoking gun.
There's no definitive evidence, no leaked master plan, no whistleblower with unambiguous proof of a vast, coordinated conspiracy orchestrated specifically by Skull and Bones that controls global events.
Lots of connections, lots of successful people, but not proof of conspiracy.
Exactly. There's plenty of circumstantial evidence, lots of anecdotal accounts, things that can be interpreted in suspicious ways. But the leap from that to a proven, large-scale conspiracy that remains unsupported by verifiable facts.
And couldn't the success of Bonesman be explained in more mundane ways?
That's another major counterargument, looking at it through the lens of normal social dynamics, especially elite social dynamics.
Right, privilege.
Exactly. Privilege, access to elite institutions like Yale in the first place. People who come from well-connected backgrounds, attend prestigious universities, form strong networks there.
You're just statistically more likely to succeed anyway.
They are statistically more likely to achieve high levels of success, regardless of whether they join a specific secret society or not. Factors like socioeconomic background, that elite education itself, individual talent, drive, ambition.
They all play huge roles.
They likely play very significant roles in the career paths of Skull and Bones members, quite independent of any secret society affiliations or alleged conspiracies. Sometimes the simplest explanation, the influence of privilege and opportunity, is overlooked.
And we talked about interpreting symbols earlier. That's a potential pitfall too, right?
A huge one. The inherent problem of misinterpreting symbolism. As we said, symbols can have multiple meanings. Sometimes they mean very little beyond tradition.
But it's easy to project meaning onto them.
Especially if you're already looking for hidden or conspiratorial meanings. That human tendency to seek patterns, combined with a fascination for the mysterious,
Can lead you down rabbit holes.
It can lead to finding significance, finding intent, in symbols where perhaps none was actually placed, or where the original meaning is lost to time, What might just be tradition or even deliberately provocative imagery from the 19th century gets easily imbued with these deep, unintended, modern conspiratorial meanings.
And finally, just the nature of secrecy itself. It breeds rumors, doesn't it?
We really can't underestimate the power of rumor and speculation, especially when you have a group deliberately shrouded in secrecy like Skull and Bones.
That information vacuum.
Exactly. That lack of reliable first-hand information creates a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum, right? So it naturally gets filled with conjecture, with guesswork, with stories.
And those stories spread.
Over time, these rumors can be amplified, repeated, distorted. They take on a life of their own.
Oh.
And in some circles, they become accepted as fact, simply through repetition, regardless of their actual basis in reality.
So the secrecy itself, ironically, might be the main cause of the conspiracy theories, rather than proof of them.
That's a very plausible perspective. The very nature of a secret society creates the ideal environment for myths and legends to just flourish. The absence of verifiable info allows speculation to run wild and then solidify into these perceived truths.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. It feels like quite a comprehensive journey.
He does.
We explored the official narrative around Skull and Bones, the history, the structure, the stated aims, and then we ventured pretty deep into that fascinating and sometimes, unsettling world of the conspiracy theories that have grown up around it over, centuries now.
It really highlights, doesn't it, how a secretive group, particularly one with such influential members, can just capture the public imagination.
Totally, and become this focal point for so much speculation, so many questions about power.
Indeed. Skull and Bones really serves as this potent symbol, a symbol of elite power, of privilege, and also of the inherent anxieties that can arise when significant influence seems to operate behind closed doors.
That lack of transparency.
Whether it's intentional concealment or just a byproduct of long-held tradition, that lack of transparency just invites endless interpretation. And in some cases, that interpretation leads down the path of some pretty elaborate conspiracy theories.
So for you, our listener, maybe here's a final thought to mull over as we wrap up. What does this enduring fascination with societies like Skull and Bones, what does it really tell us about how we understand power in the world?
Good question.
Why are we so drawn to these narratives, these stories of hidden influence, secret agendas, and maybe more importantly, where do we, as, informed individuals trying to make sense of things, where do we draw that crucial line?
The line between documented fact.
Right, documented fact and what is purely speculative interpretation, especially when we're trying to understand how the world really works and who might actually be holding the reins of power.
It certainly gives you something to think about, doesn't it?
It really does. It prompts us maybe to consider our own assumptions about power, about secrecy, and about the kinds of narratives we construct to try and explain the complexities of the world around us.
Well put.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We really appreciate you tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic to explore. Until then.